So Galactic Strike Force is a cooperative shipbuilding game in which each player controls a spaceship flying throughout the galaxy. You'll be picking up upgrades to your spaceship, getting new weaponry, getting new defenses, getting new different techs that give you all sorts of cool abilities, and each phase is going to happen simultaneously, where all players are doing everything at the same time. There's going to be 5 different phases that the game progresses through, and in each of those phases, all players will work together. So, the 5 phases are the travel phase, in which each player moves from one sector to another. The requisition phase, in which each player you'll be buying tech from the various sectors you're in order to upgrade your ship, get better gear, things like that. Then there's the installation phase, in which you take the tech cards in hand and install them on your ship, installing weaponry and defenses and exciting things. And then there's the battle phase. In the battle phase, there are going to be opposition ships that have been coming into each sector throughout the game, both during setup and then during each round of the game. And in the battle phase, when you're in a sector and there's opposition to that sector, you have to engage them, or you can hide behind a friendly ship and have them engage and you are a secondary engager. There's various tricks you can do, but pretty much in the battle phase, we all fight. And then in the aftermath phase, you do some basic wrap-up, and the enemies or the oppositions are going to be taking cards from each of the sectors.
Neil Davison and Neil Grayson, meeting guests about are signing autographs in the autograph area. Stop by to meet them and get an autograph.
So you win the game by either clearing out all of the opposition ships before their flagship enters the game. Because there's a flagship, there's an opposition flagship that's big and mean and nasty, and it's going to enter the game at some point, based on what the flagship says. And if you can defeat all of the opposition, if you can lock them down and knock them out before the opposition flagship comes into the game, then you win the game. But once the opposition flagship comes into the game, the primary objective is to defeat that flagship and take it out. And once you take it out, you win the game.
Which one is more realistic?
Well, it depends on the game. It depends on the speed of the game. It depends on who your team makeup is. Each game is going to have its own feel for it, and both options are valid most of the time. Some games are going to open up with the oppositions just spamming a whole bunch of small ships in every sector, and you're like, well, we're not going to be able to clean the field, but we can maintain this and upgrade a lot so that we're ready for the flagships. Some games are going to look around and you go, okay, we've got a really good, fast, agile team, and they've got very few slow, large ships, so we could probably team up and take them out and clean them out before the opposition flagships show up. So it's going to
have to gauge the opponent.
You got to gauge your opponent, you got to work together, you got to figure out what you want to do. So the game is played across 3 sectors, and the various sectors are going to all. Now these are all early
flagship
prototypes.
plural or flagship?
Flagship. Each opposition force has a flagship associated with it.
You have to kill one to win?
You only have to kill one to win. The one. That's it. You only have to kill one flagship to win.
That's right.
Yeah. So
it's like basically
operational.
not a huge deal. So each of the sectors, and again, early prototype art and stuff, but this gives you a basic feel for how they'll look. Each of these sectors will have a station deck that goes on it. So these are 5 of the different sectors in the game, and they'll all have various names that have various effects. And so in an average game, or in every game of Galactic Strike Force, you'll have 3 sectors.
So it'll be like 5, choose 3?
There's 10. The game comes with 10 sectors, and you choose 3.
Okay.
Yeah, we like a lot of variety. So the game comes with the 10 sectors. And it also comes with 10 Strike Force ships. And I've got 5 different Strike Force ships here to preview. So one of the cool things about this game is it's not just your average sci-fi setting. It's not mostly humanoid or anything like that. It's kind of a science fantasy setting where your races are all based on certain fantasy tropes, but then extended into a sci-fi sort of setting. So you've got, this is a techno-dwarf. This is a techno-dwarf bomber ship. Here we have a Sulf-Org bounty hunter. This is another techno-dwarf ship. This is a metahuman, and these are some neo-elves. So we've got various types of things, and their races will come into play in the different types of assists they can give each other when engaging. Like if these 2 ships were both engaging one opposite ship.
Hey, I'm around. I want to chat with you for a sec, but I'll drop back later.
Please, by all means. Tomorrow morning is going to be the best time, but anytime will do.
Okay, I'm also booth 475, far back corner.
Good to know. I'll try to swing by.
All right,
Thank you so much. Sorry about that. So if both of these ships are engaging one opposition ship, you would be the primary engager would apply its weaponry and its defense to the ship is engaging, but the secondary ship would give an effect to the primary ship based on what race was piloting it. So neo-elves give a certain kind of bonus. Techno-dwarves give a defensive bonus, metahumans give a kind of across-the-board bonus, the war specters give a weird bonus because they're a weird race. So anyway, those racial things will come into play, and they also come into play in the styles of the different things you're going to see in their decks. So Each
So there's 10 different races?
No, there's 5 different races, and there's 10 different starting ships, and there's 2 starting ships for each race. So there's 2 Technodwarf ships, there's 2 Neo-Elf
Does everybody
ships.
start with 1 or 2?
Everybody starts with 1 ship. Every player is one. You are that ship. You are that ship and its crew. And then each of the ships has its own starting deck of 8 cards. So like we've got the meta-human. This guy here, Ulmeric, and Ulmeric is a meta-human gambler. And he has his ship Marat's Folly, and he starts with his deck of cards for Marat's Folly. Ooh, these are fancy looking black and white boring cards. And his deck of cards here, he has 8 cards that he will shuffle up. And it has a semi-deck building mechanic in that you get 4 cards, and then as your ship moves from sector to sector, you'll be buying cards and adding them to your deck. And then on your turn, so I've got a hand here of cards. And in this hand of cards, I've got various types of cards. I've got boosts, and I've got techs. Those are 2 primary types of cards. Techs are cards that get installed to your ship. Boosts are cards that you can play, and some boosts say just on them in the card type boost, and you can play that card anytime. Some boosts say boost dash and the name of the phase. Like this one is a boost dash requisition. So during the requisition phase, you can play this card at any time.
So one shots.
And then ongoing slash equipment. Yes, to use the signals and turns, that is absolutely correct. Each card has a value in the upper left-hand corner that tells you how much it's worth. So, we'll move all these ships over here. Keep working with Elmer. Let's say that we're here at the Liquidfeld belt, and it has an A here. That big shiny A in that thing means that during the aftermath phase, this icon happens. So in each of the different ones, we have another one with a phase icon on it. That's another aftermath. Here's a travel one. This one has a T on it. This means that during the travel phase this happens. Whenever you begin a phase, you immediately resolve any icons in play. So we go, okay, so beginning of the phase, beginning of the travel phase, and then travel icons? Yes, there's this travel icon. And it says the ship in the sector with the most energy moves to the sector with the most ships. So the ship here with the most energy, be it a good guy ship or a bad guy ship, is forced to move to the sector where the most ships are. If that's this sector, it doesn't move. If there are ties, then it's going to go, if there's 2 that have the most, you're going to go to one of the 2 and you're going to pick which one that is. Okay, that makes sense. So here, if we're here in this one, if it's the beginning of the aftermath phase, we'll remove 1 energy from each engaged ship in this sector. So that'll matter in the battle. If you fought in that sector, there's going to be damage that happens to you because you're in an asteroid belt. And if you're fighting other ships, you have a harder time avoiding the asteroids. So all the mechanics are going to match the thematics of the game. In a sector, each sector is going to have, again, a very beautifully arted station deck. And the station deck will have 30 cards in it. This is roughly 30 cards. I didn't bother counting, not a huge deal. And that'll sit here in this area, and you'll see the top card face up. And this is the strike force side of the card. And then 3 cards go into the station. So, if I am flying Mars Falling, and there will be cardboard tokens for each of the player ships, but there will also be a separate tokens pack that you can buy the token, I mean not a token pack, but a separate minis pack, and you can get minis of each of the ships in the game. So here I am with Marat's Folly. I'm in the Liquidfeld belt. And during the travel phase I moved here. During the requisition phase, I have these 4 cards in hand, and this has a value of 30, 30, and 20, and this is a value of 10. So this is 40, 70, 90, so I have a value of 90 credits. So at the beginning of the requisition phase, we check, are there any requisition icons in play? No, there are not. So no requisition effects happen. Then, do I want to play this requisition boost? Well, it says increase my credits by 20. Currently I'm sitting at 90 credits, so I'm going to play this requisition boost, and it increases my credits to 110. Now, whenever you play a card, and it would go into your discard pile, instead, it just goes on the bottom of your deck. There's no discard pile in this game. That is not a concept that exists in this game.
Everything goes back to your deck immediately.
It goes back to your deck immediately. And so therefore, if I'm going to buy multiple cards, I can kind of stack the order of my deck. It's a bit of a far-reaching strategy, but I currently have 110 credits. There are 3 items here. This one costs 50, this one costs 40, this one costs 40. I know I could buy multiple because there's no limited number of cards you can buy, just how much credits you have. So I have 110 credits. I'm going to buy these high tensing plates here, which if damage would be dealt to my ship and it's installed on my ship, I instead destroy this card and take no damage. That sounds good. And I know that I'm going to want that soon, or I feel that I'm going to want that soon. So I'm going to buy this card. Several things happen upon me buying it. This card costs 40, so now instead of having 110 credits, I have 70 left. It goes on the bottom of my deck. Now notice that on the top, there is Excuse me, the decks are played face up. So, decks face up. Your deck is face up, this deck is face up, everything's face up. So on the back of this card is the opposition side, and that matters for something we'll see later. But all the station cards are double-sided. Strike Force side on one side, opposition side on the other, and the scheme will be really easy to tell the difference. It won't just be white title versus black title. The color scheme is very obviously different. But all the station cards are double-sided. So, Strike Force card, I buy this card, and it goes underneath my deck, face up. So, I know what's coming up there next. And now I have 70 credits left. This slides over, which is why the arrows point over and down, and this comes down. So each time you buy a card, they all fill in. So I have 70 left. Now there's going to be other people to sector, so there'll be discussions about like, hey, does anybody want this, anybody want that? Let's say I'm the only one here for now, so I can just buy willy-nilly. I know that that's 10, so it gives me an idea of what's coming up. But I'm going to go ahead and pick this up for 50, which leaves me with 20 credits, and that comes down, and I'll go ahead and pick that up for 10, leaving me with 10 credits. That 10 credits is of no good to me, but I just purchased those things, and I have an idea of what's coming up next. It's not something you need to know. It's not going to separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of good players versus bad players, because it's still got a chance of randomness, but you have an effect of being able to kind of play what's coming up next. So that was the requisition.
Point of confusion.
Yes.
The cards from your hand,
right?
You get their full credit value even if you played them.
Right. So if you at the very beginning of the requisition phase, you count up all the credits in your hand, and that's how much credits you have. So even if at that point I played every card in my hand, that doesn't change the credit value that I had at the beginning of the requisition phase, which is the amount that matters. Okay. So at the beginning of the requisition phase, you count up all your credits, and that's how many credits you have. At the end of the requisition phase, any credits you have left over, they go away.
Okay.
Alright, cool. So then it's the installation phase. On the installation phase, I have these tech cards in my hand, and these are, so this one here, each ship has a couple icons here, a weaponry icon and a defense icon. So Marit's Folly has a weaponry of 1 and a defense of 3. We'll talk more in the battle phase about what those numbers do, but for now the importance is that my ship is a 1 weaponry, 3 defense ship. Alright. So this card, Extravagant Hardware, has a 2 here. And it says when you install this deck, you put a card in your hand on top of your deck. So this one has a bit of a penalty for installing it. It's so good. So upon installing it here, when you install cards that have numbers here or here, they get installed underneath your ship card so that I can put tokens on it. You can see clearly, oh, now I'm at 3-3. I have 3 weaponry, 3 defense, but 2 of those weaponry is coming from this item. Because opposition ships can destroy text associated with your ship. So they could blow that off your ship and you would lose it. But, so now I have a 3 weaponry, 3 defense. I also have these 2 other techs. This one has a B icon, which means that on the battle phase, I can remove 1 energy from my ship, and if I do, I can draw a card. So that gives me some extra effects there. So I install that to my ship to give myself this one.
So they just kind of like slide under like while you're
right, exactly. So this one's... No, there's not going to be a limit to numbers you haven't played. The game does a good job of limiting, so you're not going to have like too many things by your accessibility. But yeah, you're not going to have a limit to. You can install a billion techs in your ship. And then this one is a defense one. It says when I install this tech, I may draw a card. So I install that tech, and I draw a card back to me. Okay, great. So now I'm at 3-4 with a battle effect on my ship.
If it was a tech, you could install it again.
Right. Since I just installed it, we're installing things, and it is in fact a boost installation. We are in the installation phase, so if I wanted to, I could discard the top card of my deck, and if it's a tech, so I can discard the top card of my deck and do a thing associated with it as a result. So that's all right. Anyway, so that's what the installation phase looks like. Then then there's the battle phase. So we did travel. We moved around from sector to sector, and anybody can move anywhere unless there are cards in play that say otherwise. Then we did requisition, we bought things. Then we did installation, we installed things. And that is the deck building / ship building aspect of the game. Where you're buying things, adding into your deck, you're installing things in your ship. You're making your ship better and you're making your deck better. You're going to be buying both boosts and techs to increase your abilities and your technology. Then in the battle phase.
Installation is the buy phase?
Right, requisition is the buy phase.
And that happens the requisition.
Travel first, then requisition, then installation, and now battle. During the beginning of the game, we would have picked one of the opposition forces to play against, and I didn't talk about them yet because they don't super matter until the requisition or until the battle phase. The various ones, there is the Technovore Infestation. Technovore Infestation is a whole ton of techno-organic arachnid creatures that build phasic web and move from sector to sector, eating all the mechanical things. So that's really bad. So you want to stop that. Their flagship is the Hive Master, a giant ship that is a giant spider-like ship that is going to try to deploy itself into a sector and start eating the Strike Force ships. So avoid that. There is the Singularity. The Singularity is a space AI that essentially tries to infect all programming in all artificial intelligence in the galaxy. And they have their giant ship, the Omega, and the Omega is just a giant robot brain ship that moves around and tries to take over your techs and sends robot ships to go fight you. There's the United Forces of Galactic Domination, a giant space fleet led by the flagship, the Vindicator, and they're pretty straightforward. We have more guns and ships than other people, and so we're just better. There's the Bereg Threllian Syndicate, which is a giant crime syndicate that has been taking over the galaxy, and they have their extortion ship, the Cryoshade. They fly their Cryoshade between a planet and its sun, blocking off the sun's rays, and say, "All right, planet, you don't have any more sun. Give us all your money." And the planet goes, "We're not going to give you all our money. We wouldn't have any money then." And the Cryoshade says, "Okay, fine, no more sun for you." And they slowly charge up the laser that's built on there, and they don't tend to shoot at planets, but they shoot at ships that come to stop it. But yeah, so they're extorting life from a planet essentially, and so you got to stop them from that. And then the last phase is the Revenants of Niotin. And the Revenants are a strange undead space race that will infest other space creatures. So there are large spacefaring creatures like giant space turtles and space whales that have other bizarre names, but essentially that's what they are. And these creatures will possess and haunt these creatures, and the Revenants will haunt these creatures and use them as their own living ships. And the leader of them is a particularly nasty Revenant named Niotin, who has found a laser dragon, a giant laser dragon creature that...
Well, you find those around.
Those happen. Those are pretty awful. But one possessed by a Revenant is even worse than before.
Of course.
So we're facing against one of these things. For now, we're going to face the
space version.
No, this is a completely different game. It's called Galactic Strike Force. It comes out next year.
Is this the one that was like Kickstarter?
Yeah, we did a Kickstarter this Strike Force. Yeah, we're just doing a quick preview of it right now. So, we're going to fight against the United Forces of Galactic Domination. And so, at the beginning of the game,
was it 6 or
yeah, there are five different. There are 5 different opposition forces, 10 different Strike Force ships.
I got all that.
Cool, great. And so so the Vindicator, and you'll see on the start of it here, it starts on the setup side, where it starts in deep space, it doesn't come into play, and then on each of the phases, like during the installation phase, it'll do a thing, and then move to the next one. On the aftermath phase, it'll do a thing, and then move the token to the next one. On the battle phase, it'll do a thing, and move the token to the next one. And on the travel phase, it'll do a thing, and then if it meets the thing that's its certain goals, the ship will move from the page to it says here, move the Vindicator back. It'll move the Vindicator to the sector with the most Strike Force ships. The ship will come into the galaxy. This ship will come and flip over, and now this is its stat block. It gives you how it behaves and what it does. So at the beginning, it's just kind of affecting things from afar, and then at a certain point, it'll come into the galaxy, and it immediately becomes the primary threat. During the beginning of the game, though, at the beginning of the game, you'll set up the game by deploying a certain number of ships into the sector. Some of them have better arts than others. A lot of scouts. Let's see some different ships. So there's going to be some various ships getting deployed into the galaxy, and the ships will be deployed in the galaxy based on the number of players you have. So ships come into the galaxy based on the number of players, and opposition flagships have strength, have weapons and defense based on the number of players. So that way the game scales well for 2 to 6 players. 2 to 6. Alright, so let's say I'm in this sector here. I've done my battle phase, I've done my travel phase to move here, I've done my requisition phase to buy things, I've done my installation phase to beat myself up, and now I am a 3-4. Great. These ships here are 5-3, 6-4, 4-2. There's a 1-2, that's not bad, and there's a 4-4. What do these weapons and defenses numbers mean? I mean, we understand what weaponry is, we understand what defense is, but how does that translate to Galactic Strike Force? Weaponry is the amount of damage you deal upon engagement. Defense is the amount of damage you mitigate. So, if I'm facing this 1-2, that seems like a pretty good deal. A 2-1 against a 1-2. And so I would take, if we were here in the galaxy, there's that hanging out there, I would take my Marit's Folly token or spaceship miniature and place it on there to denote that I'm engaging it. If someone were a secondary engager, they could place behind me to say, hey, I'm also engaging this ship, but you're the primary guy, I'm just giving you a bonus. Alright, so
how much of a bonus would be like an offensive support thing?
You could get you could get like a +1 or a +2, and but they're not going to be huge numbers. They're going to be like a +1 or a +2.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
One or
yeah,
two.
yeah. You get 1 or 2. You're going to get 1s from some things, 2s from other things, and other weird effects. Like the Neo Elves and the War Spectres have weird effects that aren't just straight number increases. So if I'm engaging a ship, it has a weaponry 1 and a defensive 2. My defense is 4, and so its weaponry of 1 is not high, so nothing happens at all. My weaponry is 3, its defense is 2. So 3 is 1 higher than 2, so 1 point of damage gets through, because their defense is damage mitigation. So I have 3 points of weaponry. There are 2, removes 2 of those points, so 1 point gets through. And that 1 point is removed from the ship in the form of energy. We use this green icon to indicate energy. And whenever energy is removed from a ship, it is always removed first from defense and then from weaponry. Unless something denotes otherwise. There are certain things that specifically remove weaponry from ships, and there's things that specifically remove defense. But when energy is removed, it is first defense, then weaponry. So, if I engage this ship, it would deal me we deal damage simultaneously. It would deal no damage to me, and after my 3 goes past its 2, 1 would damage it, so it leaves it as a 1 weaponry, 1 defense ship. Now, if I had foolishly, maybe I had some trick in my hand, engaged this 6-4, my 3 weaponry would have beat its 4 defense, so nothing would happen there. Its 6 weaponry would beat my 4, and so upon those 4 being removed, it beats it by 2. So 2 energy is removed from my ship. When energy is removed from a strike force panel, these are panels. When energy is removed from a strike force panel, it is removed from the outside in, starting with defense and then with weaponry. So, if 2 energy is removed from the ship, first 1 weaponry is removed, and that 1 weaponry removes the icon, so you have a little token that you put on this, and it removes a token from this, and that destroys this custom chassis. So that is 1 energy. When it's destroyed cards go to the trash. They don't go back onto your deck. They are removed from game, essentially. So, it is destroyed, it goes to the trash, and now 1 more is removed, dropping my defense to a 2, leaving me a 3-2. And so I didn't do so well in that engagement. Probably wouldn't have chosen that engagement in this scenario, unless I had some sort of trick up my sleeve that I was going to do. But that gives you an idea how the engagements work, and how the weaponry and defense will compare. So, weaponry is your damage, defense is your damage mitigation, and it all counts as hit points. Where energy removed, it removes this down to 0, and then starts removing this, and that's how your weapon text and your defense text can be destroyed. All right. Any questions on the battle and how that works there?
So the difference, 2 points got through, but you only lost 1 thing.
I lost 2 points, so I would have had 3 tokens here. I'm not going to pull out my tokens because they're flimsy, but I would have had 3 tokens here and 1 here. I would remove the 1, and then I would remove 1 of those tokens, leaving me at 2, even though I'm at base 3. You do drop below your base.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's a draft. Now it's the aftermath phase. This is where the opposition gets to shine. First thing it says, remove 1 energy from each engaged ship in the sector, and that's an environment effect. That's a sector effect. And so I would lose 1 energy because I'm an engaged ship. This is an engaged ship too, because the engagement clears at the end of the round, at the end of all the phases. So I lose an energy for being engaged, and this thing loses an energy. So that would leave me at 3-1, but it leaves it a 1-0. So that's going to be real easy to pick off later. And in fact, there's a lot of effects you can do to just destroy 1-point ships. So that happens first because it's an aftermath effect.
0 points.
Exactly.
Destroy 0-point ships?
So destroy 1-point ship. A 0 energy ship would have 0 weaponry, 0 defense, it's automatically destroyed. This is a 0 defense, 1 weaponry ship.
And then you take off the weapons.
Right, and if I had a card that said destroy a ship with 3 or fewer energy, well, boom, that's easy.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Cool.
Now you destroy the weapons.
Right, yeah, no worries. Yeah, weaponry is not, both weaponry and defenses are part of your ship, and they make up your hit points. So, alright, so then in the aftermath phase, once we've resolved any aftermath effects that happen at the start, the opposition forces get to attrition cards from the sector based on how many here. So I've engaged this ship. Let's say I had some friends here. If I had some of these guys here, and let's say the Grey Hammer had engaged the frigate, and the Bureau Spire had engaged the interceptor, and the Carchar's Claw had engaged the heavy cruiser, they'd have only 1 unengaged ship. And because they have an unengaged ship, they take the leftmost card, flip it over, and put it into play opposition side up. They get to steal cards. So they get a boost that says remove 3 from the strike force ship in the sector with the most defense, which would probably be Bureau Spire because it's a beefy ship, and so they would get to automatically attack us once based on their card because of their unengaged ship. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have all sorts of friends. I was alone. That was silly of me. This game is a lot about working as a team, working as a squad. So in this game here, because I'm alone, they have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there's only 3 ships in the sector station. This makes up the station, and they can never take more cards than there are in the station. But if they manage to flip all 3 cards in one go, which they're going to do now, they overrun the sector. So So a few things happen. First, they take all 3 cards. We do them one at a time. So focus firing deals me some damage. Now this only then this one here, each opposition ship gains 1 defense for each strike for a ship in the sector. But only me, so they each gain a point of defense. This is why it's a bad idea to go out alone. And then the IND Dynamo, this is a ship, it's an actual ship that was in the station. It comes out and they get another ship into play, and it has a 2 weaponry, 5 defense, and it has some various effects. So they got another ship out of that engagement. That's not so good for me.
Would all that have happened?
Attention, Jim, got attention.
Like if no one's in the
Play
sector,
Yu-Gi-Oh?
nothing happens.
Remember the one
Nothing. If no strike or ship in the sector, nobody stops them from engaging. They take them on.
Don't
Okay,
have your deck with you?
so
No
maybe,
problem.
yeah, right.
We have
So
sealed events you
if
can
there were
play in
like
too.
3 guys, you'd still go in if you felt like it just to protect one
Yeah,
ship,
exactly. So
even if you might take damage.
Right, so let's say there's only 3 of them here, but one of them's this weak guy. You know what? I'm going to come here. I'm going to engage this one guy, so at least they only get 2 cards,
Right.
and I can weaken the one. I don't really take any damage off of it, and that means instead of them taking all 3, they're only taking 2.
And they're not overrun.
And right, they very notably are not overrunning. So after taking all 3, so they don't take one like we do with the buying cards. When you buy a card, let's say I buy this card, it slides over and this comes in. If I buy this card, these 2 slide over and this one comes in. Great. When they are attritioning cards in the aftermath phase, they take 1 card, then 2 cards, then 3 cards. Then if there are no cards in the sector left, at this point, you slide the deck off, you flip over the sector card, and it's on the overrun side. Now, the effect that is on that sector is going to be strictly worse for the strike force. So the opposition is going to the sector, they're trying to get as many ships in this play as possible, they're trying to overrun sectors, and we're just trying to survive. You spend the first part of the game surviving and building up. Then you start getting a little bit more powerful, so you can really take on some of the opposition ships. And then you're really starting to do well. You're getting them, you're handling them, and you're getting stuff managed, and then the flagship shows up. Or you do really well and you clean them all out before the flagship gets there. So there are 2 main points of tension in the game. When you first have the ability to really clear them all out before the flagships show up, and you have a chance to win it, and you've got a real slim chance. But if you manage to thread that needle and win the game right there, that's awesome. However, around that point, if you don't get it just right, or if they get a little extra strong, that's when the flagship shows up and the game changes. At this point, you're a squadron of small ships taking on a big ship, and that really changes the gameplay there too.
So that's like the narrative arc.
Yep, that's what that card is.
Absolutely. You got this.
I'm probably going to take this.
Automatically if it's overrun.
It's overrun.
Otherwise when you're not.
Right. Well, and actually, if you run out of cards here, if you run out of cards in the station deck, whether you're on the overrun or the not overrun side, you're going to have a station deck trash that you'll be able to shuffle, put them back in, and keep going.
Oh, so it's not overrun if you just run out of cards.
Yeah, if you run out of cards here, it's not overrun.
But if they get all 3 of these, that's what they'll.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and the game comes with 90 station cards, so you'll have 30 on each of the different sectors. So that's not.
And you can steal discards too.
Exactly. And then
Right near myself.
there was something else. Okay.
Oh
yeah, you're right. And so he's got here, and he comes into play. He does various things. And then in each game, at the end of the aftermath phase, you do all the different things. You go back to the travel phase. You reset. You do your travel icons. You move to sector. You go around. And there's a lot. The table talk in this game is really great. There's a lot of people like, all right, I can go over here and take care of this thing. If you two can go here and take care of the big thing, there's only 1 or 2 things there, so it's not a huge deal yet. And so all the different discussion there really shapes how the game goes. The other interesting thing is overrun sectors can be set back to not overrun. If at the end of on an aftermath phase, if none of the cards flip, then it flips back. If it goes, okay, if all the cards flip, it's overrun. If none of the cards flip, it's not overrun anymore.
So you don't even have to clear them out. You could just have
Right, if
one
there's
guy,
one guy
and
there.
engage it, then you're going to undo it.
Let's say there's one stupidly huge guy. He's a 9/9.
Right, you
He's
just
huge.
go in.
You send your biggest defense ship there, and you say, just survive 1 round against him.
Yeah.
Reset the sector back to not overrun. There's 2. So we've talked about how you can win the game. You destroy all the opposition ships. Great. You destroy the flagship. Great. Obviously, you lose the game if you're all knocked out. Now, if your ship is reduced to 0 definite defense and 0 weaponry, you are out of the game, except you're not, because I wrote Sentinels the multiverse, let's be honest here. You flip your ship over, you've got 3 grounded abilities. You're going to help your teammates out on different phases. You take your ship and you put it on you take your icon and you put it on one of your 3 grounded abilities, and on that phase, you're going to do a thing to help your
So you
teammates.
pick one for the whole round.
You pick one for the round, and at the beginning of the new round, you can choose to switch it to a different one, or leave it on that one. But immediately upon being grounded, you pick one. And then at the beginning of each round, you pick a different one, or leave it on the same one. So you're still in the game forever until the end of the game, because man, do I dislike playing elimination. And then the other thing,
The other way that you lose?
Right, sorry.
Yeah.
The other way that you lose the game is if all 3 sectors are overrun.
Okay.
So you can't let up... The sectors having bad overrun things for the strike force, they're marginally bad. I mean, they're bad, but they're marginally bad. What's really bad is that you're losing the game. You are 1/3, 2/3 done. You have lost the game. So you can't let them... Just like you can win the game before the opposition ships come, before the opposition flagship comes out, you can also lose the game before the opposition flagship comes out. So there's a really big focus put on managing your things. This is a much more deterministic game than Sentinels of the Multiverse. You know what your opposition weaponry and defense is. You know what your teammates' weaponry and defense is. You know what the cards are in hand. You know what the top part of your deck is. And if you have a really good memory, you have some idea of the order of things that are coming in your deck. You don't know what's coming up in the station deck. You don't know what things are going to happen when opposition ships come into play. So there's definitely an element of randomness. But you have a lot of information in this game, and your goal in this game is really to play as tight of a game as possible, really manage the opposition, to make sure your ship is the best it can be, to try to stack your weapons and your defense as efficiently as possible in your ship, so that you have good things going on there. There are lots of cool cards that will do things when they're destroyed. They'll have this icon, this weaponry icon, and there'll be a little explosion around it that says, when this card is destroyed, a thing happens. And so there are cards like the Grey Hammer, which is a bomber. And it's going to be installing text specifically with the intent of destroying those texts to blow up something else. Like, great, I'm going to blow up some of my text, throw it at another ship, and deal damage. The Bjarlspire is a giant defensive tank of a ship, and it's just going to kind of float out into space slowly and be like, shoot me and don't shoot anybody else, I've got tons of defense. Therendum is a tiny little 3/1 assassin ship, but it's got a cloaking shield, so it can hop into a sector and be invisible and not take any damage and really avoid things, but then do surgical strikes against big ships. Karachar's Claw. Karachar's Claw is a Soulfork ship. Soulforks don't build their own ships, they scavenge other people's ships. So they either weld ships together in a really ugly boxcar looking situation, or this is actually the claw of a laser dragon, which we got to see a laser dragon earlier, that they just kind of strap some engines on the back of. And the way this ship fights is it flies through other ships as fast as possible. All it does is gun the engine and sail on until it hits something solid. And so all of the different ships are going to have a really different flavor, both of the ship and of the crew, and you're going to see those flavors come out in the way it plays and the things that are in their deck. Like Mars Folly is piloted by a gambler, and so his deck's got a lot of gambling things where you're going to be like, all right, I think I'm gonna gamble on what's coming up next. Let's see what happens here, and you're going to have a lot of those effects. Each of the different Karachar's Claw is a bounty hunter. These are assassins. This guy's an information broker, so he's going to be giving lots of information to his teammates. Each of the different strike force ships and pilots really add to the narrative of the game and of what's going on here. All of us, like I said, we're assassins and gamblers and information brokers and bounty hunters. We're not space cops. We're not Volnethian guardians. We are a ragtag team of the last hope the galaxy has. So we've got to save them, because whoever's in charge or in power either is the problem or isn't solving the problem. And so we've got to do something to save the galaxy before it all goes bad.